Shadow work is just spiritual narcissism. You say, "It's just my shadow," and think the conversation is over. But the trust you lost doesn't come back because you named it. Your partner stops bringing you hard truths. Your friends start editing themselves. You feel more authentic, and everyone else feels less safe. Here's the twist. Shadow work, done wrong, doesn't make you honest. It makes you untouchable. Name the engine up front. Shame spikes, grandiosity bails you out, and confession keeps the loop profitable. You feel small, so you inflate. I'm deep. Inflation grants permission. I get to be harsh because I own it. Permission creates harm. Harm brings shame. And the cycle resets. In the next minutes, you'll see the exact mechanism that turns healing into narcissism. How confession replaces accountability. How status hijacks growth. And how projection flips morality. Grounded in Jung's shadow, narcissistic defenses, and clean repair. Stay for the 10-second tell. What shadow work was meant to be. To understand why this goes sideways so fast, we need to go back, briefly, to what Jung meant by the shadow. The shadow isn't a hall pass for your worst impulses. It's the drawer you shoved parts of yourself into, so they wouldn't ruin the performance. Anger that kept you safe as a kid. Envy that signals desire. Power that scared your family. All the traits you disowned so your persona, your good self, could get applause. Integration isn't acting those traits out. It's acknowledging they exist, feeling their charge in your body, and regaining choice under pressure. Jung talked about assimilation and the moral effort of fairer relations. That means the goal isn't to be realer, it's to be more responsible. The question isn't, can I say the cruel thing because I'm aware of it? It's, can I feel the cruel impulse and not hand it to you? Here's where misinterpretation starts. Awareness gets mistaken for permission. You spot envy, name it, and, without noticing, let naming it do the work you're avoiding. The system whispers, you owned it. You're safe. And then you proceed as if confession equals repair. It doesn't. Insight's job is to widen your behavioral options, not to justify the option you already wanted. Real integration is unglamorous. It shrinks the gap between what you say and what you do. You notice the urge to dominate a conversation, and you take a breath, ask one question, and listen to the answer. You feel the flash of contempt, and you choose a boundary or silence instead of a jab labeled radical honesty. You don't post about the breakthrough. You let people feel the difference over time. There's a humility built in. When you integrate shadow, your self-story quiets because you're no longer performing goodness or edginess. You're managing energy, yours, so others don't have to. And that shifts the core outcome from intensity to reliability. Your circle learns you can be upset without punishing. They trust you with nuance because you don't weaponize it. Why does this matter? Because misuse amplifies grandiosity. Done performatively, shadow work becomes proof you're deeper than the room. You start narrating your darkness as a brand. You confess on cue, cry on camera, and without meaning to, demand admiration for vulnerability. Meanwhile, the people around you are dealing with the blast radius. Quick cuts, messy repairs, and a new rule that closeness requires surviving your storms. Done properly, the opposite happens. True work lowers reactivity. It buys you that tiny window, 90 seconds, sometimes less, where you can separate impulse from action. That's the margin where character lives. Not in the post, not in the poetry. Right there, between the surge and the move you choose. Get this, shadow integration is relational, not performative. If it doesn't make you easier to be around when you're stressed, it isn't integration. It's identification. You've merged with the thing you discovered and are calling it truth. That's how awareness turns into permission and eventually into a social weapon. Because once permission meets an audience, it gets applause. And applause changes everything. Weaponization number 1. It's my shadow as an excuse. While that applause is warming up, something else is happening in private. It's my shadow starts replacing, I'm sorry. The stakes are human. Partners stop expecting repair. Friends learn to preface feedback with disclaimers. Teams tiptoe around the person who keeps owning their darkness moments after unloading it. The consequence is subtle but brutal. Harm is reframed as growth, so the harmed feel immature for wanting basic respect. And once harm is renamed medicine, it vanishes from the ledger. The bruise becomes a breakthrough, so there's nothing to fix, only something to admire. Here's the mechanism. Confession slides into the spot where accountability should live. You name your envy or rage and feel lighter, catharsis. The room softens, relief. That relief becomes currency. Say the right words, show the right tears, and the moment passes. The nervous system's calm. Reward delivered. But nothing changed in the behavior stack. The apology became the product, and intermittent reinforcement seals it. You mess up, then deliver a striking insight. People forgive because the insight looks like progress. Sometimes you do follow through, which resets hope. Then the next rupture lands. The brain clings to the memory of the good cycle and waits for it to return. That unpredictability keeps everyone engaged far longer than stable harm ever would. It feels like momentum. It's a loop, classic variable ratio reinforcement, the same Schedule B. F. Skinner identified as the most addictive because rewards arrive unpredictably. Social clout turbocharges the loop. Online, edgy authenticity wins reach. The more charged the outburst, the more dramatic the confession, the more engagement you get. Harm becomes truth-telling. Cruelty is edited as radical transparency. The audience learns your rhythm. Provocation, mea culpa, nuanced caption, promise of growth. The algorithm nods. Your reputation for depth grows as your repair skills stall. Microstory 1. The DM blow-up. A creator receives critique. Instead of a boundary, not taking unsolicited edits today, they unload. Paragraphs of superiority sneaked into, I'm just being direct. Screenshots leak. Backlash hits. Cue the story. I see my shadow, my inner tyrant. She was protecting a wound. Comments flood with heart emojis. 2 weeks later, same pattern, new language. Microstory 2. The just being real post. A coach writes a takedown of a former client. Masked just enough to pass as anonymous. When called out, they reply, "This is my shadow expressing. I won't silence my truth." Translation: I'm allowed to harm because I named the part of me that wants to. The client disappears from the platform for a month. Microstory 3. The performative apology. If anyone felt hurt, I'm sitting with my shadow. It's hard for people to handle my medicine. Notice the pivot. Impact becomes fragility in the other. Repair gets displaced by a monologue about one's depth. The apology is a brand asset. Meanwhile, the person who was hurt has to either swallow it or be cast as not ready. Their pain goes quiet because naming it threatens the group's story of transformation. What nobody notices in the rush of language is the accountability bypass. Accountability is concrete. Name the behavior, name the impact, state the prevention plan, ask what's needed to repair, and then do it. Confession alone is vapor. It metabolizes your shame without reducing others' load. It looks like intimacy while leaving the debris in place for someone else to sweep. Meanwhile, the people around you learn helplessness. They try to have boundaries, but every line they set gets reframed as their shadow reacting to your realness. They attempt feedback, and you fold it into content. My community reflected this to me. Without changing the triggers that keep detonating. The signal they get is simple. You'll always process, you won't always change. Here's where it gets slippery. The confession often includes real insight. You might accurately map the family pattern or the attachment wound. But insight without opposite action is identification with better lighting. The problem isn't that you know your shadow. It's that you're using the knowing to sanctify the impulse. I'm aware of my envy becomes license to shave the other person's reputation down to a size that soothes you. Then the status payoff. Vulnerability theater invites praise. Thank you for modeling. That praise hits like morphine. Now there's an incentive to keep the cycle alive, because each rupture becomes an opportunity to demonstrate depth. The room becomes your mirror. The mirror becomes your drug. Integration turns into performance art with real casualties. There's also a language trick. Complexity over clarity. You swap simple words, rude, unfair, harsh, for ornate frames, activation, shadow transference, archetypal charge. The more complex the phrase, the safer you feel. But complexity doesn't mop up spilled milk. It just makes the puddle glisten. And in the shine, evidence disappears. No incident to log, no prevention to design. Just a story strong enough to erase the scene. The consequence isn't abstract. Trust erodes. People get quieter around you. Opportunities thin because your unpredictability costs too much. Those who stay adapt to your weather. They shift their schedules to avoid your storms. They cushion your exits. They learn your tells and plan around them. That caretaking looks like love. It's management. Over time, the ledger inverts. The harmed keep records in their bodies while the story on paper says healing happened. That mismatch is how relationships die without a scene. So what breaks the spell? A tiny substitution. Replace "it's my shadow" with "I did X, it landed as Y." Here's what I'll do differently next time. Z. Follow it with, is there anything I can do now that would help? No poetry. No archetypes. Just the hinge that matters, prevention. If you need to share about your process, do it later, in private, with someone who's not bearing the cost of your pattern. One more micro moment that changes everything. Pause before the confession. Ask yourself, am I saying this to relieve my guilt or to reduce their burden? If it's the first, zip it and take an action. Send the replacement. Set the guardrail. Cancel the live if you're dysregulated. Let changed behavior carry the message. Because when excuse-making meets status, it mutates. The performance becomes the point, and the point of repair goes missing. That mutation needs fuel, and the next section is where it gets it. Specialness. Weaponization number 2, spiritual status and specialness. While excuse-making keeps the cycle alive, status makes it lucrative. The moment "I do deep shadow work" starts functioning as a badge, a new hierarchy appears. Depth becomes currency. Suddenly there's an inside and an outside, and the inside is reserved for those who've gone to hell and back, and can talk about it eloquently on Thursdays. Here's the human cost. When spirituality turns into a ranking system, closeness depends on spectacle. People feel pressure to disclose more, bleed more, confess sharper, just to keep their seat at the table. The quiet ones, doing the unglamorous work of not exploding, fade from view. The loud ones, performing wounds with skill, rise. The paradox: the more special you feel for your scars, the less capacity you have to hold someone else's. Mechanically, it's simple. Vulnerability becomes theater, and theater collects supply. You share a trembling story, the room mirrors all. That all feels like love, but it's applause, and applause asks for an encore. Now the nervous system links validation to disclosure. If your week is calm, you have nothing to post. If your week is chaotic, you have content, and content is proof you're still deep. The algorithm rewards your most dysregulated days, so you unconsciously feed it. Enter the depth Olympics. Who felt the heaviest grief, the rawest anger, the darkest erotic shame? Who wrestled with the most ancient archetype? The contest is never announced, but it's obvious in the room. People preface with, "I almost didn't share this," then deliver a symphonic confession that lands like a TED Talk. The social price of saying less goes up. The bar for realness rises until it's indistinguishable from self-harm. Language laundering keeps the image clean. Instead of, "I ignored 3 emails and snapped at a friend," it becomes, "I was moving through a Pluto underworld initiation while patterning a new nervous system." Complex words create a halo. They also create fog. Fog is useful when you don't want anyone to see you didn't keep a promise. The more ornate the frame, the harder it is for others to ask a simple question. Did you follow through? Watch the group dynamics. A leader with status models disclosure as dominance. Long monologues, tears on cue, then a lesson about sovereignty. Followers mirror the cadence, not the ethics. They learn to narrate inner chaos with gravitas while skipping the part where they make amends. Feedback starts to sound the same. Your share was so potent. Potent becomes a synonym for painful. People start calling harm medicine to avoid the discomfort of naming it as harm. Here's where specialness mutates into entitlement. If I'm the one brave enough to go deep, then I deserve latitude others don't. I'm allowed to be late, to counsel last minute, to honor my process at your expense. If you object, it proves you're not as evolved. This is the conversion trick. Spiritual superiority converts basic courtesy into oppression. Don't burden me with your expectation that I show up. That's your attachment. Translation: my specialness outranks your needs. Microstory: the circle with a guru vibe. The facilitator invites anything that's true. When a participant shares confusion about a boundary violation, the facilitator pivots to an archetypal frame. You're meeting the devouring mother, and slides past the fact that he texted her at 2 a.m. about her magnetic energy. The group nods at the myth, relieved to avoid the awkwardness of saying, "That was inappropriate." Myth shield status. Another micro: the certification mill. Practitioners must post weekly breakthroughs to remain in good standing. The loudest posts get reshared by the brand. Now disclosure is tied to career advancement. Clients notice that their coach's feed is a steady stream of catharsis, but session notes remain vague, invoices precise, repair absent. The message is clear. The company values narrative, not outcomes. Specialness also attracts projectors. If you carry the mantle of depth, people throw their unmet longing at you. You say something ordinary, rest is important, and it gets quoted like scripture. That halo affects your errors. You start believing your language changes people more than your behavior does. It's intoxicating. It's also how you stop updating your ethics, because the affirmation fogs consequence. There's a quieter mechanism too, scarcity of belonging. Many people come to spiritual spaces because regular life made them feel unseen. Specialness looks like belonging with interest. You finally matter. That relief is addictive. If maintaining status means repeating a performative vulnerability loop, the nervous system will do it, because losing the group feels like losing oxygen. This isn't evil, it's attachment in drag. What breaks the trance? Metrics that don't bend to performance. Ask, after your insight, what behavior changed? Look for receipts. Fewer cancellations, faster repairs, clearer fees, shorter monologues. Watch how someone handles a no. Do they lean on mystique or logistics? Listen for plain words. I was rude, not my Mars was activated. Plain words are kryptonite to specialness because they collapse the stage. Here's the tell in conversation. When hierarchy gets threatened, does the person widen the circle or tighten it? Widening sounds like, you might be right, I'll adjust. Tightening sounds like, you don't get it yet. The first reduces their own specialness to make room for reality. The second doubles down to protect supply. Because specialness always needs an enemy, a foil to prove its height. And nothing supplies that better than projection. Weaponization number 3, projection and moral inversion. Specialness is hungry, and projection is its favorite meal. The move is slick. Call everyone else unintegrated, so you don't have to sit with your own guilt. You feel anger. Instead of owning the heat, you label the other person's boundary as shadow avoidance. Now you're not deflecting, you're diagnosing. Your shame gets outsourced. Their credibility gets dented. You stay pure. Here's the moral flip. Harm is rebranded as medicine. The sting you delivered becomes a sacred sting. If they wince, that proves the dosage worked. Dissent gets renamed fragility, and fragility becomes evidence they can't handle truth. The conversation shifts from, you crossed a line, to, you're not ready. This is moral inversion. The person harmed must demonstrate readiness to receive more harm. Language supercharges it. Jargon lets you move the goalposts in real time. You're projecting. That's your inner child reacting. You're in transference with me. Each phrase is unfalsifiable in the moment and puts the burden on the other person to pass an invisible test. If they push back, you add levels. Now your protector is online. The finish line keeps walking away, and you hold the whistle. Microstory, a retreat debrief. A participant says, when you singled me out, I felt humiliated. The facilitator replies, humiliation is how your shadow learns humility. He offers a myth about the trickster and asks the group to reflect on where their egos resist initiation. The specific act, public shaming, disappears into allegory. The person leaves the circle wondering if their pain was immaturity. Another, a peer-to-peer call. You ask a friend not to share your private message. They post it anyway, then announce, I'm committed to transparency. When you object, they reply, notice how your fear of exposure blocks intimacy. This is your work. The theft becomes a teaching. The boundary becomes pathology. You're left deciding whether to chase repair or accept the role of the uptight one. Groups adopt the leader's defenses by osmosis. Followers start policing each other with the same jargon. Loyalty tests appear. Do you trust my read of your shadow? If you hesitate, you're in resistance. If you agree, you're doing the work. The only way to stay in good standing is to accept the frame that puts you at fault. Dissent goes quiet or underground. Now add escalation. Critics are isolated. First gently, then publicly. Subtle. We're no longer aligned. Overt. They're in a scarcity spiral. People are encouraged to block, unfollow, cleanse the field. A purity spiral spins up. The standard for belonging narrows with each turn. Today it's no gossip. Tomorrow it's no questions during transmissions. The leader's comfort becomes doctrine. Here's the psychological trick you need to see. Projection preserves grandiosity by exporting shame. If I can plant my unacceptable impulse in you, I don't have to feel it. I get to be the surgeon, not the patient. The bonus is social. Calling out your shadow secures applause from those invested in the hierarchy. It's faster than apologizing. It's flashier than changing. Meanwhile, gaslighting cloaks itself in sophistication. The claims can't be tested. Your system is dysregulated by my frequency. Your ancestors are reacting to my medicine. Try disproving that on a Tuesday. This is epistemic fog. The more you struggle, the more your struggle is used as proof that you're unwell. You either accept the assertion or signal your pathology. Either way, the projector wins. The impact is not theoretical. Communities fracture along invisible lines of fear. People stop offering honest feedback because feedback is a liability. Repair becomes rare because repair requires someone to say, "I caused harm," without adding, "and that harm was good for you." Those who don't conform leave quietly. Those who stay adapt by suppressing intuition. The smartest ones keep a parallel chat just to reality check what they heard in the room. There's a reliable tell in conversation. When someone says, "Your reaction proves my point," pause. They just used your humanity as evidence of their authority. Another tell, the moving frame defense. If you address a behavior, they leap to motive. If you address motive, they leap to archetype. If you try to ground the discussion, time, place, action, they accuse you of being in the mind. The target keeps shifting so you can't land. So how do you puncture moral inversion without feeding it? Bring it back to the concrete. At 4:12 p.m., you posted my message. That broke our agreement. How will you prevent that next time? No theory, no myth, no family system. If they reframe, repeat the specifics. If they pathologize you, decline the invitation. We can talk about my reaction after we handle the breach. This collapses the theater to a room with chairs and a table. One more anchor. Ask for falsifiability. What would count as evidence that your read of my shadow is wrong? If the answer is nothing, you're not in a conversation. You're in a court with a fixed verdict. Exit accordingly. If there is a test, agree on it, run it, and then decide whether this is a space where truth is shared or manufactured. Because these three weaponizations, excuse, status, projection, are not separate tricks. They're parts of one psychological engine that turns shame into spectacle, spectacle into power, and power into permission. And once you see the engine, you can stop being a character in someone else's myth and start building boundaries that don't need a caption. The narcissistic engine underneath. All three moves, excuse, status, projection, run on the same motor. It's a defensive loop that starts in a place nobody wants to sit. Shame. Not the useful kind that says, "You missed, fix it." The hot, identity-level shame that whispers, "You are small." That heat is unbearable, so the psyche reaches for a fast coolant, grandiosity. I'm not small, I'm special. The moment you inflate, you feel powerful again. Power invites entitlement. Because I'm special, the rules bend. Entitlement guarantees rupture, missed agreements, sloppy harm, avoidant repair. Rupture restarts the shame, and the loop spins faster. Meanwhile, spirituality becomes a mirror that reflects only you. Self-referential logic takes over. Every event is about your awakening, your triggers, your archetypes. A friend's boundary isn't their need. It's a lesson for your inner child. A critic isn't offering data. They're playing a role in your myth. The world collapses into a stage for your transformation. It feels profound. It's just centrism with incense. Here's the adhesive that keeps the loop together, pseudo-insight. Novel words, new frameworks, sudden clarity. The dopamine hit from understanding feels like change. But it isn't change, it's narration. You can feel it in the timeline. After a blow-up comes a post with 5 bullet points about your protector pattern. People applaud the clarity. Your nervous system takes the applause as evidence of growth. The next time pressure spikes, your behavior looks the same because you trained yourself to solve shame with language, not limits. Boundaries collapse inside this engine. Radical honesty becomes permission to dump aggression and call it integrity. You tell yourself, "I'm just naming what is," while your listener absorbs the cost. The missing capacity is friction tolerance, the ability to feel the internal pressure without exporting it. Without that capacity, honesty mutates into compulsion. You say it because you can't hold it, then rebrand the spill as medicine. There's also a schedule to the cycle. Intermittent repair keeps it socially profitable. You'll pick a few moments to do a pristine amends, clean, public, moving. Those land. People remember. Then the pattern returns. The ratio of rupture to repair stays high enough to keep everyone off balance, but low enough to keep them invested. It's the slot machine effect applied to relationships. Occasional jackpots make the losses feel like part of a meaningful game. Let's track the loop with a concrete day. Morning. You wake with dread about yesterday's harsh message. Shame rises. To escape, you write a thread about meeting the tyrant within, complete with a myth and a moral. The response is warm. Grandiosity returns as relief. People get you. Afternoon. A client asks for a refund per your policy. Entitlement flares. You tell them their scarcity is projecting onto your abundance. Rupture. Evening. A friend texts, "That was rough." You offer a swift apology and a promise to reflect. They exhale. Repair, sort of. Night. The mind spins a plan to share tomorrow's learning. The loop resets, ready to mine the next breach for content. Notice the roll of time. The engine accelerates when you compress the gap between event and explanation. The faster you can name your shadow, the less you have to feel it. But feeling it, without narrating, without performing, is the only thing that interrupts the loop. That's why real integration looks boring from the outside. There's no monologue to admire, just fewer eruptions and a steadier presence. Now, the hard part. The loop can run unconsciously, even if you're sincerely trying. Good intentions don't puncture defense. What interrupts it is constraint. Limits you choose, and limits you accept from others. Constraints slow you down so shame doesn't immediately recruit grandiosity. Boundaries like no posting within 24 hours of conflict. Practices like text 3 lines max when upset. Schedule the call for tomorrow. These aren't moral judgments, they're speed bumps. Here's another gear in the engine: identity fusion. If the deep one is who you are, you'll protect that identity at all costs. Feedback threatens it, so projection becomes defensive reflex. Your insight becomes armor. You ask, "Who would I be without my story of myself?" And your body panics. That panic is where genuine choice appears. Do you double down, or do you let the image shrink? There's a practical litmus test to locate the engine in real time. Ask, is this about relieving my discomfort or reducing theirs? If you're about to post, message, or speak to relieve your own pressure, pause. That's the grandiosity grab coming. If you can bear the heat for 90 seconds, walk, breathe, write privately, the entitlement wave crests and passes. Choice returns. You can pick an action that reduces their load, a refund, a boundary, a clear yes or no. Finally, understand how the loop feeds on audience. Without witnesses, grandiosity withers. That doesn't mean isolate, it means change the witness. Swap the crowd for a single person who isn't impressed by your words, someone who tracks only behavior. Invite them to reflect when the cycle spins. Ask them to measure you by fewer ruptures, faster repairs, less jargon. They'll be annoying. They'll also be your exit. If that's the engine, the next question writes itself. What does it feel like when the motor shuts down and accountability starts to drive? What real integration feels like? When the engine winds down, the room gets quiet. Real integration doesn't announce itself. It shows up as fewer explanations to cover the same old moments. It's boring and steady. People often think they'll feel heroic. Mostly, you feel ordinary and reliable. The highs flatten, the lows shorten, and the space between urge and action widens enough that others stop bracing when you open your mouth. Day to day, it looks like smaller ripples. You still feel the spike, shame, envy, anger, but you don't outsource it. Your body heats, your palms sweat, your jaw clicks. Instead of narrating, you give yourself 90 seconds to let chemistry pass. Sometimes you set a timer. The urge to teach or confess fades just enough for a choice to appear. That choice is the work. Friction tolerance is the core sensation. It's the ability to feel wrong, seen, or slowed without retaliating. In practice, it's 3 beats. Feel, name the urge, do the opposite. The opposite action rule is simple and brutal. If the urge is to punish with a hot take, you log off and send a brief, kind reply tomorrow. If the urge is to withdraw and vanish, you send a 2-line update with a new deadline you can keep. Opposite action turns insight into muscle. It also changes how you repair. Clean repair is minimalist. No theater, no audience, no archetypes. You lead with the behavior and the impact. I missed the call, you prepped for nothing. That cost you time. Then you offer a prevention and a question. I've put 2 alarms on future sessions. Anything else you want from me? You don't ask for absolution. You don't add a memoir. You let their answer shape what you do next. Over time, the observable metrics shift. Fewer cancellations. Shorter lag between feedback and adjustment. Less jargon in conflict. People tell you they feel safer, not more activated. New opportunities come back because you've reduced the hidden tax of managing you. Your friends don't have to preface hard truths. Your partner stops scanning your face to decide if tonight is a good night. Trust arcs lengthen because your pattern is predictability, not apology. Here's the strange relief. Your self-story shrinks. You spend less time explaining why you are the way you are, and more time keeping small promises. The private scoreboard changes categories. You used to count insights and followers. Now you count kept agreements and quiet evenings. You discover that intimacy grows in the absence of spectacle. People lean in because nothing explodes. There's still heat. You'll feel old reflexes, especially under stress. Integration doesn't delete them, it domesticates them. You learn to house your shadow like a dog that used to bite. You feed it, walk it, keep it away from the playground. On hard days, you shorten the leash. On easier days, you let it roam in your journal, your art, your therapy hour. You stop parading it through crowded rooms. Accountability becomes a ritual, not a performance. You adopt tiny structures. A 24-hour cooling-off rule before posting about conflict. A 3-sentence maximum, intense texts. A weekly audit of one habit you're shifting. You share your protocol with one witness who tracks behavior, not prose. They don't compliment your depth. They ask, "Did you do the thing?" It's annoying. It's also freedom. You'll notice language gets plain. "I was rude. I broke an agreement. I'll fix it by Friday." Plain words are a nervous system regulator. They make problems solvable. They also drain the glamour from dysfunction. Without ornate framing, there's no stage to stand on. Just a task and a timeline. What does it feel like in your body? Less buzzing after conflict. More sleep. Fewer compulsion loops to check responses. A click when you choose the opposite action, like a gear catching. The relief isn't euphoric, it's exhale. People around you mirror it. Conversations end sooner. Fewer postmortems. More doing, less undoing. And yes, your audience may shrink. Spectacle draws crowds, steadiness doesn't. The followers who came for fireworks drift. The ones who stay begin to trust you with unglamorous truth. The room changes from fans to friends, from clients to collaborators. The currency stops being awe and becomes reliability. Real integration makes you easier to love when you're under pressure. If it doesn't do that, it's not integration. It's performance in a new costume. The shadow isn't a license. It's a load you learn to carry so others don't have to. When you can carry it quietly, without demanding applause, you're out of the loop and into a life that doesn't need a lesson to be worth living. The 4-part Anti-Narcissism Protocol. If the engine feeds on speed, spectacle, and self-reference, the antidote is slow, specific, and other referencing. 4 parts. Simple on paper. Hard in the moment. That's why it works. Part 1. Spot the trigger. Not the archetype, the exact wound. Name it in plain, local language so your nervous system has something concrete to hold. I felt small when they ignored my message. I panicked when money was mentioned. I heard my dad's tone in that critique. Precision shrinks the monster. Archetypes are inflatable, specifics are measurable. The test: if you can't tie your feeling to an event you could find on a calendar, you're probably narrating to avoid feeling. Stakes: when you miss the actual trigger, your reaction hunts for targets. You'll overcorrect in the wrong room or dump heat where it doesn't belong. Specificity keeps harm local. Action: build a trigger map you can draw on a napkin. Sensation, story, urge. Jaw tight story. They don't respect me. Urge, dominate the thread. 3 columns, 10 seconds. The act of labeling moves you from flood to flow. That shift is small but critical. It returns a piece of your choice. Impact: over weeks, you'll recognize your top 3 triggers faster. Recognition buys you time. Time buys you better moves. Part 2. Separate urge from action. There's a 90-second physiological window where adrenaline spikes and metabolizes. Decisions made inside that window are usually about discharge, not truth. So you install a delay. No posting, no policy changes, no voice notes longer than 30 seconds. No, we need to talk in the first 90. Set a timer if you must. Drink water. Stand up. Look out a window. Let chemistry finish its sprint so your values can enter the room. Stakes: without the delay, radical honesty becomes sanctioned aggression. You'll call it clarity. They'll call it attack. Trust will call it expensive. Action: script 1 sentence you send instead of exploding. I'm heated. I'll respond tomorrow. Or, I saw this. I'll get back by 3 p.m. Put it in your notes app. Use it verbatim. Consistency teaches your circle what to expect when you're flooded. It also teaches your body that pausing doesn't equal abandonment. Impact. Relationships stop bracing for your first take. You become predictable under pressure. That predictability is safety. Part 3. Opposite action rule. Once the surge drops, ask, what would reduce their burden, not my pressure? Then do the opposite of your reflex. If your reflex is to punish with a takedown, send a 2-line boundary tomorrow. If your reflex is to disappear, send a brief update with a new date you keep. If your reflex is to explain, ask one question instead. Opposite action is where integration becomes visible. It's also where it hurts, because you'll do what you don't want in service of what you do want. Trust. Stakes. Without opposite action, insight becomes costume. The people around you will hear your language and still carry your load. Action. Pre-choose opposite actions for your top 3 urges, so you don't improvise when you're hot. Urge, dominate call. Opposite. Ask 2 questions, then mute and take notes. Urge, ghost after critique. Opposite. Reply with received. Schedule a review and show up. Urge, publicize conflict. Opposite. Decline to post, request a private chat with a third party present. Impact. Your pattern changes shape. Not overnight, but audibly. People notice they don't have to mop after you. Trust arcs lengthen. Part 4. Clean repair. Repair without theater. 4 beats. 1. Name the behavior in simple words. I interrupted you 3 times. 2. Name the impact you can reasonably infer. You had to fight to be heard. That costs energy. 3. State a prevention you can control. Next time I'll set a timer and leave space after I speak. 4. Ask what would help now. Is there anything you want from me here? Then do that thing, or say no clearly. No archetypes, no memoir, no extraction of reassurance. If they offer feedback, write it down and don't argue. If you need to share your process, do it later with someone who wasn't harmed. Stakes. Performative repair feeds the cycle by rewarding your shame relief. Clean repair feeds trust by reducing their future risk. Action. Make a checklist card you can glance at mid-call. Behavior. Impact. Prevention. Ask. Run it even when you think you're right. Especially then. Add 2 guardrails. No repair posts and no public owning within 24 hours. Public repair is often reputation management in costume. Impact. Repairs get shorter and land deeper. People stop dreading the aftermath because the aftermath is a plan, not a poem. Optional supports tighten the system. Boundaries. A no-post window after conflict. A 3-sentence max rule in heat council. Lives when dysregulated. Scripts. I'm not available for diagnostics. If you want repair, keep it to behavior. A witness. One person who tracks your behaviors weekly. Cancellations, repair speed, prevention follow-through. They don't praise your insights, they count your receipts. You'll know the protocol is working because your drama inventory shrinks. Fewer fires. Less content. More held promises. And when misuse shows up in others, these steps protect your time and sanity. You're no longer bait for their loops because your responses are boring by design. That's the goal. Become too steady to feed on. The 10-second tell for spiritual narcissism. There's a quick litmus you can run mid-conversation. Listen for over-personalization of dissent. You say, that landed harsh, and they reply, your reaction proves your shadow. In 10 seconds, disagreement becomes your pathology. The content of your feedback vanishes. Your nervous system is the headline. That move protects their image while putting you on defense. Second tell, displacement of repair. You name an impact, and they pivot to potency. My medicine was too strong for you. Translation, the hurt proves their power, not their mistake. You're asked to admire dosage instead of discuss harm. The more you protest, the more they point to your protest as evidence you can't handle truth. Run the consistency test. After insight, does behavior change? If they publish a beautiful reflection, but show up the same way the next week, same lateness, same leaks, same monologues, you're not witnessing growth, you're watching narration. Track 3 cycles. If the pattern repeats, believe the pattern. Do a power audit. Who benefits from their truth? If their revelations reliably raise their status, expand their client funnel, or silence a critic, you're not hearing truth. You're watching strategy. Real truth often lowers a person's standing short-term because it includes repair that costs them something. Watch for receipts, not reach. Here's a rapid script when the tells appear. If they pathologize your dissent, I'm not available for diagnostics. I'm naming a behavior. X, are you willing to address that? If they displace repair, I'm not debating medicine. I'm asking for prevention. How will you avoid why next time? Keep it behavioral. Refuse the archetypal detours. If they escalate, goalposts moving, jargon stacking, don't argue the frame. Exit without feeding drama. We see this differently. I'm stepping back. Block or mute if needed. You don't owe a debate to someone who turns your boundaries into a sermon topic. Your calm exit denies the intermittent reinforcement the cycle feeds on. When it's you who might be slipping, flip the tell inward. Before you answer feedback, ask, am I making their reaction the story? If yes, stop. Ask yourself, what behavior can I change that reduces their load? Do that, then say less. If you feel the urge to brand the moment, that's your sign to go private. In groups, the 10-second tell scales. Notice what happens when someone raises a concern. Does the room turn to the critic's shadow or the leader's conduct? If the circle reflexively analyzes the dissenter, you're in a system that protects power through psychology speak. Healthy rooms privilege specifics and repair plans. Unhealthy rooms privilege narrative and loyalty. A final cue, time pressure. Spiritual narcissism loves urgency. We need to clear this now. Urgency compresses the 90-second window, so you react. Then they capture your reaction as proof of your fragility. Decline the rush. I'll revisit tomorrow. If they push, that's data. Respect for pacing is respect for consent. Use the tells like street signs. When you spot one, slow down, shrink the scope to behavior, and choose exits over essays. You'll save weeks of explanation by trusting 10 seconds of pattern recognition. Community dynamics and contagion. While those 10-second tells help one-on-one, communities run on different physics. Mimetic desire sets the current. In any room, people copy what gets attention. If depth performances get clout, the whole culture tilts toward disclosure as status. You'll hear the cadence spread, long, trembly shares, mythic frames, medicine metaphors, and watch results shrink. It isn't conspiracy, it's reinforcement. Whatever the algorithm rewards becomes the group's nervous system. Here's the first contagion pattern: echo-safe spaces. They start as havens for honesty and hard feelings. Then feedback gets filtered. Share with love turns into share what doesn't threaten the leader. Dissent is sent to DMs. DMs are discouraged because triangulation. Soon, the only sanctioned critique happens in formats the leader controls: Q&As, hot seats, ceremonies where resistance is therapeuticized. Disconfirming data stops entering the system. The room grows quiet and convinced it's thriving because no one brings low vibration. In reality, it's a data desert. Second pattern, role. Capture. Coaches and influencers discover that confession loops are a business model. Each meltdown breeds a lesson. Each lesson sells a program that promises fewer meltdowns, but requires weekly shares to show progress. Clients become content suppliers. The metric isn't comma lives, it's consistent posting. Revenue hums even as reactivity stays flat. The community calls it devotion. It's retention via intermittent reinforcement. Microstory, a membership that tracks breakthroughs. Members must post 2 emotional shares per week to stay visible to mentors. Quiet weeks lower your visibility score. Folks start hunting for pain to maintain ranking. One woman stops attending her niece's birthday because she needs to be with her inner child on camera. Her family feels the absence. The group applauds the depth. That's mimetic desire at work. The room's applause overwhelms the outside world's feedback. Language laundering scales too. Complex terms become passphrase that signal belonging. Somatic rupture, archetypal initiation, frequency field. These phrases act like badges. If you don't speak them, you're new. If you do, you're in. The cost is clarity. Practical questions, refunds, boundaries, scheduling get framed as spiritual tests. Logistics are treated like low consciousness. When basic administration is taboo, chaos becomes sacred. Now watch how trauma markets take shape. Offers proliferate, initiations, immersions, deep dives. The promise is always the same: less reactivity, more regulation. Yet there's no published metric. People renew because they feel seen, not because their life changed. Meanwhile, crises create content. The system benefits more from rupture than from stability. That misalignment keeps communities inflamed just enough to need the next container. Groupthink develops rituals to protect itself. Loyalty mantras, trust the process, stay in the field, are deployed when someone asks for specifics. Purity spirals emerge around Evanero rules. Don't consume unvetted teachers, Don't read unregulated books. Don't mix modalities. Rule enforcement looks like care. We're protecting the work until it looks like control. People who violate norms are asked to self-select out for integrity, which conveniently removes dissent before it can spread. Meanwhile, shadow bait accounts grow the culture online. Clips of cathartic cries, cryptic captions about meeting the dragon, call-outs framed as love letters to the collective. Engagement spikes on the most dramatic posts. Algorithmic proof that spectacle sells. Viewers learn to equate sincerity with tears and truth with pain. Communities recruit from those clips, then replicate the cadence inside. The pipeline is complete. Attention, enrollment, performance, new attention. There's a quieter booster, scarcity. Many join because they're isolated or disillusioned with traditional institutions. The group feels like oxygen. Losing it would sting. So members absorb small harms to keep access. They stop naming confusion. They sell the program to friends to normalize their investment. The social proof becomes their paycheck, literal or emotional. That dependency makes the ecology fragile and ripe for contagion. How do you inoculate a community without killing its warmth? Introduce transparent metrics for behavioral change. Not vibes, numbers. Track repair time. Hours from harm named to prevention plan delivered. Track prevention success. Percentage of similar incidents over 30 days. Track schedule reliability. Commitments kept versus cancelled. Track jargon rate in conflict. Plain language statements versus archetypal frames. Post anonymized aggregates monthly. Let reality, not rhetoric, grade the work. Add structural antidotes. Rotate facilitation so disclosure doesn't equal dominance. Separate teaching from sales. Don't pitch inside repair. Publish a grievance route with timelines and options for third-party review. Require a 24-hour cooling off before public processing of conflicts. Ban public diagnostics. Any shadow reads must be requested and consented to in writing. Create a plain words first rule in all conflict threads. These are boring. They're also what ethics look like in motion. Build parallel spaces for outcome talk. Host receipt circles where members share one measured change. I reduced cancellations from 4 to 1 this month. And the practice that did it. No applause for catharsis, only acknowledgement for follow-through. The culture recalibrates from performance to proof. If you're a member, run a personal contagion audit. Ask, do I feel pressure to perform pain? Are my outside relationships improving? Do I leave calls with actions or with language to post? Does my nervous system settle after sessions? Or does it chase the next dose? If the answers trend toward performance and chasing, step back. Reduce inputs. Test life without the loop for 30 days. See if your conflict count drops. Finally, remember the rule of cultures. What you reward, you repeat. If a community rewards clean repair, plain speech, and measurable prevention, integration spreads. If it rewards intensity, mystique, and loyalty over reality, narcissism spreads. It's not about good people or bad people. It's about reinforcement schedules. Change the schedule, and the room changes. Jung misread. To make sense of the drift, we have to correct the reading. Jung's shadow wasn't a backstage pass to act out whatever you've repressed. He framed it as a moral task in relationship, becoming aware of disowned traits so you could stop projecting them onto other people and relate more fairly. The aim wasn't spectacle, it was humility. Integration expands choice, yes, but it also narrows permission. The more you see, the less you excuse. Individuation gets twisted here. Online, it's sold as specialness, become uniquely you above the herd. Jung meant something different. Become distinct enough to shoulder responsibility to the collective. Individuation moves you toward the world, not away from it. Your uniqueness stops being a brand and becomes a capacity. Less fantasy, more service. If your individuation isolates you, inflates you, or exempts you from ordinary courtesies, that's inflation, not growth. He also warned constantly about inflation. What happens when unconscious contents flood the ego and you mistake psychic energy for personal greatness? That's the hazard of public depth. When you dramatize inner material before you've built a container, ethics, boundaries, accountability, you catch admiration that your structure can't metabolize. You rise too fast on fumes. Then your shadow uses the altitude to do damage and calls the descent an initiation. Another misread. Thinking shadow work is primarily about expression. Jung's language, assimilation, integration, points to digestion, not display. Private analysis, dreams, symbols, a long, patient conversation with the unconscious. Not everything belongs on the feed. He understood that the psyche loves mythic theater. He also knew theater spikes inflation. That's why serious depth work stayed mostly private, held in analytic relationships built for reality testing. Instagram therapy collapses that frame. You get archetypes without analysis, emotion without containment, confession without consequence. Cultural translation makes the gap wider. Jung wrote inside a clinical, relational discipline with mentors, supervision, and a tradition obsessed with projection and countertransference. Social media flattens it into quotes and prompts. Meet your shadow becomes a journaling challenge. Active imagination becomes a sound bath. None of that is evil, it's just leaky. Without the guardrails, privacy, practice, patience, the odds of inflation rise. And inflation loves the attention economy. Look closely at the parts of young people cherry-pick. They quote, making the darkness conscious, but skip his constant insistence on the moral dimension. Fairer relations, recognition of limits, reduction of projection. They love the archetypes, ignore the ledger. They take the glamour, leave the grind. Jung wasn't anti-emotion, he was anti-omnipotence. He wanted wholeness, which includes limits, boredom, and the humbling work of staying in relationship when you'd rather retreat into myth. There's also a context issue. He didn't use the phrase shadow work. He spoke of the integration or assimilation of the shadow, the first stage of serious work that opens the door to further complexity. When the web turns shadow work into a personality, edgy, confessional, raw, it freezes a doorway into a destination. People set up camp in the threshold and start charging admission. That's how a developmental process becomes a persona. So what's the practical takeaway if you respect the lineage? Keep most depth work private until your repairs are consistently clean. Prioritize relationships over revelations. Use plain language for impact and prevention. Reserve myth for meaning you explore with a trusted other, not an audience. If you're tempted to share, ask whether the share reduces someone else's burden or just regulates your own heat. If it's the latter, return to your practice. And about patience, Jung's timeline was years, not weeks. He expected backslides, unconscious eruptions, and slow integration. In that timeline, metrics matter. Fewer projections, faster repairs, smaller outbreaks of grandiosity, steadier work, warmer relationships. If your life is getting louder, not calmer, you're probably feeding inflation. Stop feeding it. Shrink the circle. Strengthen the container. Let your behavior get boring again. Finally, remember the center of gravity, relational humility. The shadow isn't a monster you slay. It's a neighbor you manage, so it doesn't terrorize the block. When you carry it without demanding applause, you're closer to Jung than any caption. That's the bridge to the next trapdoor. How modern therapy speak, stripped of context, helps people dodge exactly this humility. The language traps. By now you've seen the pattern. When behavior won't carry the weight, language tries to. The first trap is confession as credential. I'm owning it gets deployed like a badge. It sounds noble. It buys you time. But I'm owning it without I changed it is self-soothing, not. Repair. You'll hear the cadence. Long origin story, clear naming of the pattern, then a fade to black where the prevention plan should go. The applause lands anyway. The nervous system mistakes being seen for being safe, and the pattern survives to post again. Here's the second trap. Amateur diagnostics as control. Over-pathologizing others creates leverage. You're avoidant. You're codependent. That's your trauma response. These phrases shift power instantly because they frame you as the clinician and the other person as the case. It's tidy and it's invasive. Diagnoses, real or pop, don't mock flaws or return deposits. They just pin a label on the person who asked for a boundary and call it insight. Then come the euphemisms for harm. You'll hear medicine, activation, karmic mirror, edgewalking. Each word turns pain into poetry so you can avoid saying the ordinary thing. I was rude. I broke trust. I used you for content. Euphemism is anesthesia. It reduces the discomfort of naming what happened while increasing the risk you'll do it again, because anesthetized people repeat. So you need a test that cuts through the haze. Run the checklist. Plain language, clear behavior, measurable repair. 3 questions. 1. Can we state what happened in words a teenager understands? You posted my message without asking. 2. Can we name impact without myth? I felt exposed. That cost time and trust. 3. Is there a prevention that would be obvious to an outside observer? If a message mentions privacy, ask before posting. If any part fails the teenager test, you're in theater, not repair. There's a smaller trap inside the big ones. Passive voice. Hurt was caused. Boundaries got crossed. Who did the causing? Who crossed? Passive voice dissolves agency, just enough to sidestep responsibility. Switch to active voice and watch accountability reappear. I hurt you. I crossed your boundary. It's clunky at first. It's also adult. Another tell, future faking with insight. I'm learning to slow down. I'm working on my reactivity. I'm integrating. Future fakes are promises without schedules. They're safe to say because they're impossible to audit. Convert them into a plan. What one behavior will change by when? For the next 30 days, I won't post within 24 hours of conflict. Now we can check. Language also expands to avoid the word no. It's not aligned. I'm honoring my body. The field isn't resourced. Sometimes the truth is, I don't want to, or I can't. Plain no's feel harsh to a culture that equates softness with goodness. But soft words that hide a hard move feel worse on the receiving end. Say the clear thing kindly and early. You'll save both parties resentment and rewrite your nervous system's script about boundaries being dangerous. Let's reframe in scripts that move weight off words and onto acts. Shift from shadow to impact and plan. Instead of my shadow got triggered by your email, try, I interrupted you and derailed the meeting. That cost time. Next meeting, I'll keep a pad open and hold notes. If I interrupt twice, I'll mute. Instead of, I'm owning that my medicine was strong, try, I gave unsolicited feedback. I'll ask permission next time. Do you want anything from me now? Instead of you're projecting, try, I'm not willing to take on that role. If you want to discuss my behavior, name it specifically. And set a house rule. No diagnostics without consent. If someone invites your read, what do you see? You can offer impressions, tentatively, in plain words. If not, stay with behavior. You raised your voice. You missed the deadline. You shared private info. Behavior is verifiable. Motive is guesswork dressed up as wisdom. Watch for jargon spikes during conflict. The moment the words get loftier, slow down. Ask, can we say this in simple terms? People committed to reality will accept the downgrade. People hiding will cling to vocabulary like a flotation device. That response is your data. A rapid pocket tool. The 3-line rule. Intense exchanges. Limit yourself to 3 short lines, each with 1 action. I see the issue. I'll fix the invoice by 5. Next time I'll confirm scope in writing. No origin story, no archetype. If you need catharsis, schedule it elsewhere. The 3-line rule forces you to pick behavior over biography. When you're on the receiving end of language traps, you don't need perfect counterspells. You need boring questions. What will you do differently next time? By when? How will we know? If the answers arrive in clouds, you've got your answer. If they arrive in clocks, you might have a partner. Language can heal, but only when it carries weight it can bear. Clarity, consent, commitment. Everything else is decoration. Keep the room furnished with verbs. Case study, from spectacle to substance. Let's walk one story from spectacle to substance. Meet a mid-tier creator we'll call Rowan. Brand, radical honesty. A year ago, her feed was a metronome. Confession, catharsis, collapse, repeat. She'd post voice notes crying in the car about meeting the tyrant. Then a carousel on sovereignty. Then a live where she owned her shadow and cried again. Followers climbed. Clients poured in. Behind the scenes, trust hemorrhaged. The inciting event was small and costly. A former client messaged about a missed deliverable on a group program. Rowan replied with a 2 a.m. wall of text. Your scarcity is projecting onto my creative process. Screenshots leaked. Comment sections swelled. Rowan doubled down with a reel. Sometimes my medicine is too strong. She got the dopamine, applause for owning, and woke to 3 refund requests, 2 affiliate partners pausing, and a friend sending a single line. You're hard to be around when you're righteous. That line landed. She heard the engine we mapped. Shame to grandiosity to entitlement to rupture to shame. For once, she didn't post. She printed the 4-part protocol and called a behavioral witness, an operations friend named Dev, who agreed to track actions, not insight. First assignment, 30 days of the 24-hour rule. No public processing of conflict. No owning posts within a day of rupture. Dev got permission to text no feed if Rowan slipped toward performance. They built a trigger map on a single page, sensation, story, urge. Her top 3, jaw tight when questioned. The story, you're trying to control me. the urge to dominate with language. Another, stomach drop when money's named, the story, I'm being robbed. The urge to punish with policy. And a late night one, buzzing after lives, the story, I'm needed. The urge to overshare for connection. They taped the map above her desk. Opposite actions were pre-chosen. Urge to dominate? Ask 2 questions, and mute for 1 minute before responding. Urge to punish refunds? Quote the policy once, then offer a clear option. Partial refund or added session, no sermon. Urge to overshare? Close the app, text a friend one mundane thing she did right that day, and go to bed. 90-second windows were enforced with a literal timer. I'll reply at 3 p.m. became a canned line she copied and pasted. Then came clean repair with the former client. No archetypes. 4 beats. I dismissed your request with contempt. That cost you time and made you doubt your choice. I've added a 2-step check before any after-hours messages and moved refund conversations to daytime email only. Would you like a partial refund or an additional one-on-one call this week? The client chose the call and took the refund later. Rowan swallowed the cost. Dev marked, repair delivered, and prevention enacted. They set metrics up front, so the room couldn't drift back to vibes. 3 numbers for 60 days. Cancellations per month, average repair time from impact named to prevention sent, and jargon rate in conflict messages. Baselines were ugly. 5 cancellations last month, repair time 5 days average, and jargon in 70% of tense threads. By week 4, 1 cancellation, repair time 26 hours, jargon down to 15%. They posted none of this. Dev had a spreadsheet. Rowan had fewer fires. Trust moved in the numbers too. Client retention ticked up from 62% to 81%, and on-time session starts went from 68% to 93% in the same period. Guardrails tightened where she leaked. No lives when dysregulated. A 3 lines, 1 action rule for tense emails. A shared doc of templated boundaries, so she wasn't improvising while hot. She told affiliates she'd publish a monthly commitments dashboard to them privately. Deliverables, done or not, with notes. No spiritual language allowed in that doc. Just yes/no and dates. Publicly, the feed changed. Long confessional reels disappeared. Short posts with logistics replaced them. Office closed Friday. Refunds processed Monday. When she did share personal work, it was after prevention had run for 30 days. A caption simply said, I used to post in heat. I stopped. Here's what helped: timers, witnesses, and saying less. Comments dipped. A few diehard fans missed the fireworks. She didn't explain. Revenue dropped 18% in 2 months. She paused a high-drama group offering and shifted to fewer clients with clearer scopes. What grew? Retention. Renewals stabilized and then rose from 58% to 77%. Her assistant reported fewer weekend panics. Partners returned quietly. We can try a pilot again. The friend who'd sent the hard line sent another. Calls a comma. I don't dread the debrief. There were slips. Week 7, a spicy comment poked her old reflex. She typed a tapestry about the field and caught herself at line 4. Timer. Copy-paste. I'll respond tomorrow. She took a walk, came back, and wrote 3 lines. I see the confusion. Here's the policy. If you want to discuss, email here. No halo. The thread died. Her body shook for 5 minutes and then settled. Dev texted a single check mark. By quarter's end, the metrics told the story she used to try to perform. Cancellations, from 5 to 1 to 0. Repair time, 5 days to 1 day to same-day prevention plans for minor breaches. Jargon rate, down to near 0 in conflict. Sleep, up. Live frequency, down. Followers, down 12%, while client retention rose 19 points and refund requests dropped 70%, from 10 to 3 per quarter. Complaints, down more. Invitations that required steadiness. Podcasts with pre-interviews, collaborations with clear scopes, inched up. What changed the most was private. Her evenings got quiet. She didn't refresh comments for dopamine. She noticed small satisfactions. The inbox cleared. The call started on time. The apology was 3 sentences and landed. The identity she thought was essential, the deep one, shrunk without disappearing. She kept a journal for myth and dream and shared those with a therapist, not an audience. Her partner said, I feel you in the room again. Spectacle to substance wasn't heroic. It was unglamorous constraint, boring metrics, and the humility to let admiration fall while reliability rose. Rowan didn't become saintly. She became dependable under pressure. And once her life stopped being content, her relationships started being relationships. That's the shift every protocol aims for. Fewer speeches, better behavior. Your personal audit. Bring this home. No audience, no halo, just you, a pen, and the parts that get noisy when you're tired. Start with an inventory called Insight I use instead of change. 1 page, 3 columns. Column 1. The phrases you reach for when you've messed up. I'm owning it. My shadow. I was activated, not aligned. Column 2. The behaviors those phrases usually cover. Late replies, double booking, sharp tone, private leaks, last-minute cancellations. Column 3. The fallout other people quietly absorb. Time lost, trust dented, extra labor, second guessing. Seeing the ledger is step 1. It moves weight from words to cost. Next, map your pattern. Think like a field reporter, not a poet. When does the trouble recur? List 3 recurring situations with times and contexts. After 9 p.m., I start righteousness threads. Money emails spike my heart rate. I punish with policy. Public critique makes me grandstand. Under each, write the first body cue and the first thought. Jaw tight. They don't respect me. Stomach drop. I'm being used. Chest heat. I'll teach them. The body is early warning. If you can name the cue, you can catch the urge before it performs. Now pick one opposite action you'll repeat for 30 days. Not 5. 1. Make it boring, measurable, and other-serving. Examples. No responses within 24 hours of conflict. 2-question rule before offering feedback. Reply, received, I'll respond by 3 p.m. instead of sending a voice note. Confirm scope in writing before starting work. Tie it to moments, not moods. Put it on your calendar daily. Opposite action only works if it's preloaded. You won't invent integrity in heat. Choose a witness. Not a fan. Someone who likes you, but isn't impressed by your prose. Share your one action, and give them permission to check once a week with 3 questions. Did you keep it? If not, what did you do to repair? What prevention did you add? No therapy, no archetypes, no gold stars. They count receipts. If that sounds unromantic, good. Romance fed the loop. Define repair rules before you need them. Write a 2-sentence script you'll use when you break your 1 rule. Sentence 1 names behavior and impact. Sentence 2 names the prevention. I missed the meeting. You waited on me. I've added alarms and a 5-minute buffer to prior calls. Then ask, anything else you want? If the other person names something doable, do it. If they ask for something you can't give, say a clear no and propose an alternative. Repair isn't self-erasure, it's containment. Draft scripts for disengaging from spiritual narcissists. Keep them short and behavioral. I'm not available for diagnostics. If you want to discuss, keep it to behavior. We see this differently. I'm stepping back. No public processing. Email logistics if needed. Put them in your notes app. In heat, you'll forget your boundaries. Pre-scripted honesty keeps you from improvising a poem when a period will do. Set your metrics. 3 numbers for 30 days. Conflicts per week, repair speed, hours from impact named to prevention sent. Prevention success, did the same breach recur? Add 1 language metric. Rate your own jargon in tense messages from -3. Post nothing about this. You're not making content, you're making a life. Review weekly with your witness. If the numbers worsen, shrink the goal. If they improve, don't add a second goal yet. Boredom is proof it's working. Audit your inputs. What accounts spike your urge to perform pain? Mute them. What groups reward spectacle? Step back for a month. Replace with inputs that reward steadiness. A running log of kept promises. A friend who asks for dates and times. A calendar that shows 3 small, finished tasks per day. Reduce caffeine at night. Add a walk after conflict. Body first, words later. Check your environment for leakage points. Do your systems create crises you then alchemize into wisdom? If your calendar is chaos, your shadow will have plenty to own. Fix logistics before you seek meaning. Clean your scope, tighten policies, reduce offerings if needed. Boring structures are anti-inflation medicine. Run the litmus weekly. Did my presence get easier to be around? Ask 2 people privately, not the feed. Accept their answers without debate. If they say yes, don't celebrate, keep going. If they say no, pick the smallest lever that reduces their load and pull it for another 7 days. Finally, write 1 promise you can keep that nobody will see. No posts after 9 p.m. Reply to invoices within 24 hours. Leave the room before the speech. The shadow loves stages. Integration loves doors that quietly close on time. The simplest litmus test. Here's the cleanest test you can run without a therapist, a circle, or a caption. If the work makes you easier to love under pressure, you're integrating. If it makes you harder to be around, more intense, more fragile, more demanding, you're performing. You don't need a rubric to feel the difference. People lean in, or they flinch. Translate that into 3 weekly numbers. Track conflicts. How many blow-ups, cold shoulders, snipes, or long silences happened? Track repair speed. Hours from "you hurt me" to "here's what I'll do differently." Track prevention rate. When a similar situation popped up, did the new guardrail hold? These are unglamorous numbers. That's the point. Integration shows up where life gets boring in the best way. Use one rule to steer your audit. Fewer speeches, better behavior. If you catch yourself composing a monologue about your lineage, your nervous system, your flavor of archetype, stop. Ask, what would reduce their load right now? Then do the smallest thing that fits in a sentence. Refund issued. Rescheduled for Tuesday, calendar invite sent. I'll hold questions until you finish. If you want a mantra, borrow this one. Less theater, more receipts. And remember, the algorithm accelerates the worst parts. It rewards spikes and spectacle, which creates a feedback loop where your most dysregulated moments get the most reach and pull you back into performing pain. Microstory to lock it in. A friend texts, "Your comment on the call felt condescending." Reflex says defend. Explain your intent. Cite your trigger. Add context. Litmus says simplify. "I talked down to you. I'll pause before offering advice next time. Anything you want from me here?" They ask for nothing. You don't push for absolution. Later, when the situation repeats, you mute for 3 breaths and ask a question instead. The circle notices because nothing explodes. Run the litmus on your calendar too. A chaotic week is gasoline. If your schedule invites emergencies, you'll keep mining them for meaning. Tighten it. Shorter blocks, buffers between calls, a firm cutoff. Replace cathartic nights with small, repeatable closures. Inbox to 0, checklist cleared. Lights out at the same time. It's not asceticism. It's scaffolding so your shadow doesn't need to perform to get fed. Check your language for plainness. Say late, not unregulated. Say broke trust, not medicine landed sharp. Plain words keep you in the solvable world. Jargon loosens the bolts and lets the car rattle. If you can hand your sentence to a teenager and they know what to do next, you're on track. Invite 2 private mirrors who don't need you to be special. Ask them monthly, "Am I easier to be around?" Take the answer without argument. If yes, don't post it. If no, pick one opposite action for the next 30 days and tell only them. Keep it small enough to keep. The litmus is a compass, not a brand strategy. And watch your audience shrink to the size that fits your nervous system. Spectacle swells rooms. Steadiness right-sizes them. The people who stay will want your company, not your crisis. That's your sign you've moved from extraction to exchange. The simplest litmus test is a door you walk through every day. Does your presence lower the temperature? If it does, keep going quietly. If it doesn't, stop narrating. Choose one constraint and try again tomorrow. This isn't repentance, it's practice. The shadow loves stage lights. Integration loves working bulbs in the kitchen and the habit of turning them off when you're done. Insight doesn't integrate you. Steady, boring behavior under pressure does. If tonight you use the protocol once, delay, opposite action, clean repair, you'll feel the room relax without a speech. Want more of that? Subscribe for practical deconstructions that trade drama for dignity. Then watch the Enlightenment Trap next if you're ready to spot bypassing where it hides best.